Hi everyone. It's always nice to be the last one. So spare us. Hopefully our discussions will be very interesting. It's very quite, it fits that we're talking about storage and megatonne storage, and we're the last on the schedule, so kind of the dot over the I. But we are facing, as we've heard in the last couple of days, large issues. We've heard numbers fly around back and forth. 2022, approximately 40 million tons were stored globally, CO2. Yesterday, Rachel from Morgan Stanley mentioned 55 million tons probably this year. European Union target is 50 million tons per year stored in 2030. And then we hear these numbers, very high numbers, between 6 and 10 gigatons that need to be stored on an annual basis if we're going to achieve the set goals by 2050. That's huge. Furthermore, we are looking at a mandatory market, a voluntary market. The prices of ETS, approximately 70 euros today. We heard Rachel mention yesterday in 2030, Morgan Stanley estimates the ETS price to be 120 per unit. So very, very dynamic changes that we're facing in a new industry. We here in Iceland are Carbfix. We are building Coater Terminal, the world's largest mineral storage site. 3 million tons when it reaches full capacity. 90 million tons stored when over a 30-year period. This is a new industry. For a small economy like Iceland, this can actually be quite significant. It can contribute quite into the local environment as well as the national environment. We estimate we're creating approximately 600 jobs while we're building the Coater Terminal. The economy, we can say, the injection that could round up to approximately 500 billion Icelandic kronur over the operational lifetime of the project. So we're talking some significant numbers that can actually contribute quite significantly to the local economy here, and of course on a global basis. But with that, I would like my panelists to introduce themselves, and then we can go into discussions. And I encourage you guys to be dynamic in answering back and forth. So we'll have a very flexible and lively discussion. So please.
Thank you very much, Kristinn, and thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be in beautiful Iceland. So my name is Ingvild Syvertsen. It says here that I work in Aker Carbon Capture. Actually now it's SLB and Aker Carbon Capture joint venture. We have a background in the carbon capture industry with more than 20 years of experience. And actually, much like Carbfix, we were also spun off as a separate company in 2020. So we feel that we have some similarities on the timelines we're having. I mentioned not being just Aker Carbon Capture, but SLB and Aker Carbon Capture joint venture, and this is a quite recent development. So we've entered a joint venture with SLB basically, and we see that this opens several opportunities for us, and we're very much excited for what's coming in the future. Me personally, I at least hope we will get a new name, because SLB and Aker Carbon Capture joint venture, I need to take my bet. So hopefully we'll get something new that is shorter. Even though this joint venture is now on, I would like to say that we're still very much a carbon capture technology provider, and we're currently building 7 carbon capture plants in Europe that will capture 1 million tons of CO2 per year. And that we're very proud of course. Taking it on to what I do and how storage plays into my everyday work. So I have a team that looks into early phase customer inquiries, basically from all over the world. And we get a lot of these. And we see that 70, I would say closer to 80% of these, they require transport and storage to make their business case and their planned capture possible. So for us, storage and following what's happening in the storage field, it's highly important. And when we do evaluate these requests from customers, if there's no storage opportunity available, we don't see that it will be moving. So very interesting to be here today and looking forward to hear more from the other panelists.
Thank you, Ingvild.
Yeah, Floris Mackor. I work for a 120-year-old company, Liquide. We're in industrial gases. We're present in all sorts of industries, but also in healthcare, in food, in electronics. Our interest in carbon capture is that we have a sizable equity emission that we're reducing, in part by going green, but also in part by doing carbon capture and storage. And capture as a storage has been quite a booming market in the last, let's say, 10 years. In the hard-to-abate industries like lime and cement, our technology, cryocap technology, seems to be a very good fit. We've been co-applicant or applicant in about a dozen innovation fund applications that have been awarded. So we currently have a portfolio north of 5 million tons a year that we will capture, and we're looking for the most suitable place to either store it or mineralize it. Yeah? Storage can be either depleted gas fields in the North Sea or saline aquifers in the North Sea or in Norway. We're developing all that. Other part that we do is most of the capture projects that we have are quite reasonable in size, let's say 500,000, 2 million tons. So we try to aggregate them to sizes of 2.5, 3 million tons by bringing them to a terminal, liquefying the CO2 and make sure that it's an interesting and economic size for sequesters or mineralizers to take part on. So yes, I would also like to thank Carbfix for hosting this, inviting me, making it a success. Although I don't want to make advertisement for Carbfix, I do think that mineralization is something that we could have more of, because it will solve some of the social issues, and it also will enable maybe Europe to relook at onshore storage or mineralization. Sorry.
Thanks, Floris.
My name is Caroline Braun from Landwärme. First of all, thank you very much for having me. Excited to be on this panel. Landwärme is a biomethane trader, so not a CDR company per se. What we do is we work with plants that upgrade biogas, so the gas that comes from anaerobic digestion of biogenic matter, to biomethane, and then inject that biomethane into the gas grid. And we have been doing this for, I think, almost 15 years now, which means we started when biomethane really wasn't a thing, and built a very good market position there. We are also working with biogas upgrading plants through regulatory requirements, through certification, making sure the product actually fits the needs and the regulation on the other end. And what I do within Landwärme is I am team lead business development and carbon removals. That started out more on the business development side, sort of looking at everything that happens around biomethane. So for example, liquefied biomethane, bio-LNG, that can be used to decarbonize heavy-duty transport. One of the gases surrounding biomethane that has gained a lot of my focus recently is biogenic CO2, because what happens when you upgrade biogas to biomethane is the leftover gas stream, depending on the upgrading technology, especially if we use membrane technology or amine scrubbers, can be extremely highly concentrated CO2 that comes from biogenic sources. So we have plants that are way above 95% of CO2 purity in their off-gas streams. And currently what they are doing with that is venting it back into the atmosphere, which is ridiculous because we need biogenic carbon and we need carbon dioxide removal. So the task of my team and what we set out to do is get all of these plants to actually keep capturing that CO2, make it transportable, and put it into good use or into storage. And that is quite small scale. Our plants produce between 4,000 and 15,000 tons of CO2 per year. We already have some that are operating, bringing CO2 to Neustadt, for example, but also into utilization cases. But in order to cover all of the plants within our portfolio and possibly the market, we are talking about 100 point sources within our portfolio, and then times 2, 3 for the German market. And if we look at potentials, it's going to be a huge task, and it's going to require megaton transport and storage, because not all of these plants will be able to do something with their CO2 right on site. And that's what I'm here to talk about, and exciting.
Thank you, Caroline.
Great, thank you for being here. My name is Benedicte Storebø. I work in the business development team in Northern Lights. That would be Northern Lights JV and not the phenomenon we see in the sky, even though we'd like to take the credit for it. So Northern Lights is a transportation and storage provider. So we pick up liquefied CO2 in vessels from various locations in Europe and sail to Øygarden outside of Bergen on the west coast of Norway, where we have a receiving terminal. We push that CO2 through the receiving terminal and in a 110 kilometer pipeline out and into the North Sea, where we have injection wells, and the CO2 is then pumped into the Salin aquifer, which is 2.6 kilometers underneath the seabed. So that's kind of the basics within Northern Lights.
Thank you kindly for your introductions. So as you hear, the Europe's megaton transport and storage terminals, it is pretty much, we're talking about the value chain. So the value chain is from the emitter, capture, and then you move forward to the liquefaction. You have let's say, an intermediary storage hub. Then you have a transport. In the Kota case, as well as in Northern Lights case, it is by ship. And then you have the end destination, which is the storage. So Northern Lights and Carbfix, the Kota terminal. All of you explained a little bit on the rationale, but if I can throw the question out to the group, why do we need transport and storage terminals in Europe? Why is it so important? Who wants to catch the ball?
Well, the obvious answer is...
Sorry, Benedicte. Go ahead.
The obvious answer is that if we can't transport and store the CO2, we're out of business, and we will not reach the targets that we've set. That's the simple answer.
Yeah.
But there are varieties within that concept. Emitters tend not to be located next to a storage site, and transportation is needed. In the future, that might change with new concepts or larger concepts for those emitters who will store the CO2. But in the industry, there are also a lot of players that are very small. For instance, in the voluntary carbon market. And having a business case that they can proceed with will probably require to team up with their neighbors or competitors in some sort of hub. So I think, yes, I mean, it's a necessary need in order to store the CO2.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, since you mentioned small emitters, I feel like I should say something to that. I think what is often forgotten is that this megaton transport and storage isn't just a cement company being connected to an oil field. via pipeline, but it can be an enabler for small-scale emitters and for carbon dioxide removal. If we, for example, take the European Fit for 55 package, there is a 35 BCM biomethane goal in there. So that means there is the aim of building a lot of plants that are also going to capture biogenic CO2 and have these clean off-gas streams that I mentioned. And if Megatonne transport and storage capacity is there, if this is built, these plants can at the same time provide millions of tons of carbon dioxide removal. So the storage and transport capacity could be an enabler for that to happen. Because otherwise we have biogenic CO2, but it is on site all over Europe.
Mm-hmm. Floris?
Yeah, so I agree with what was said, but the EU has decided that sequestration is a big part of the roadway to getting our Kyoto and Paris engagement done. And it's also clear that a lot of these things, they benefit enormously from economies of scale. If you build a 100-kilometer pipeline offshore, a few inch more means a few million tons more. Yeah? So in the end, if we want to achieve our common goals, we need to make sure that CCS becomes affordable, not a luxury. And like with a lot of things in life, if you go for economies of scale, if you make one iPhone, nobody can have it, but obviously they're so cheap, we can all have them. And I think for CCS, we need to go to a size that will enable us to have a cost per ton that is in the acceptable range.
Yeah, yeah. Ingvild, you were...
Yeah, I totally agree with what was said by the rest here, but also, Floris, you mentioned US, but we also do have a storage goal from the EU now with the Net Zero Industry Act, which is highly important, right? So the focus also from EU is clear that we need more storage, and Megatonne terminals will definitely play into meeting that goal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If I said EU, I meant EU, the just published sequestration note. Yeah. So.
Yeah. In Benedicte, you guys at Northern Lights are a little bit further ahead when it comes to commercializing, initiating. If Floris mentioned economies of scale and things being affordable. In regards to that, there's a lot of challenges, setting up a first of a kind. Is there anything you can elaborate on from that aspect?
Yeah, I'll give it a try. Yeah, so we're getting closer to completion on our facilities. So we're actually having the Northern Lights Summit later this month, where we will also celebrate the opening of our facilities for the first development on our side. So it's super exciting. We will be ready on our side, but we will need some CO2 in order to actually start the operation. So that will come in 2025. And for the first development, I mean, we are within, in Northern Lights, heavily subsidized by the Norwegian government with 80% for the first development. Moving forward, we are now working towards the second development in addition to future growth, both in terminals and licenses. And in order to do that and move forward, it's not just the Northern Lights business case that needs to add up, it's the entire value chain. So that will be the emitter, the capture, and the transportation, and the storage. And that can be complex. There is a timeline that needs to be aligned. Everybody needs to take their FID, chicken and egg discussion. We've heard this the last 2 days here. And then the regulatory portion of it, cross-border bilateral agreements, and the differences between the VCM market and the compliance market. Yeah. So yeah, it is complex. I do not have the solution, but I think we need to push forward. I'd like to see more projects, more competition, more emitters that would like to store. I also understand that there is a need for more support on the regulatory side in terms of clear rules and subsidies in order to kickstart the industry.
Floris, you mentioned that your portfolio is approximately 5 million tons. Obviously, for a large company like Liquide, it's a challenge, and we talked about the value chain. You are the first part of the value chain. Is there anything specific that you are more concerned on than?
Concerned, yeah, we need to. First of all, the 5 million, north of 5 million, what I said is not equity emissions. It's the aggregate number of our own emissions and that what we do as a service for others. So, and that brings to the first point. Collaboration is important. If I take the Portals project, on which we are also part, it was a cooperation. It's not subsidized. There's a contract for difference. We can have a discussion if that is subsidy or not. But in essence, we need to get 7 parties to make an FID more or less at the same time and have a tight schedule. So therefore, it's very important that you team up with companies that are innovative enough on the one hand, but also have a desire to live over the existence of the project and are willing to take long-term commitment. So that is very crucial. And as you said, we are at the beginning of the value chain. The rest is just as important, but at some point, there's very few companies that can do everything. So we concentrate on bringing the best and affordable technology and the best way to bring the project down the line. For instance, one of the themes that was mentioned here a few times, but it's still ongoing, the specification of CO2 is still meandering, and hopefully it's converging into a set specification. And so, again, there we work across the industry. But I think things of concern are the ones that we will talk later about, affordability, clear regulations, public acceptance, but you also need to get the right people at the right time together, yeah? We don't run empty trains, so if the train is on time but there's no passengers, it will not work. And the other way, if you have a full station and no train, it doesn't work. So we need to work together to make that timing and that project stream work.
Yeah, it sounds like the chicken and the egg, which come first.
No, it is, as I said, if you pick the right partners, you have a better chance on success than if you do it haphazardly. And we've had the success, but we need a lot more success. Yeah.
Caroline, from your aspect as on the voluntary part of the coin.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had enough mentions of the chicken and the egg problems, so that one definitely. For us, another, or what we are monitoring quite closely at the moment is policy development, I think, and it has been mentioned before today. That's a really, really exciting field at the moment, but also one where details matter greatly, so it needs to be monitored closely, because what we are doing right now is we are capturing voluntarily. Nobody forces us to capture our biogenic CO2. And we have the voluntary market that we can use to finance these projects, which is great, but which is not going to help us kickstart all of these projects. We're going to need to transition to a compliance market or find compliance markets in which the business case works. And yeah, there, I think there are a lot of challenges to discuss when it comes to, especially in megatonne infrastructure, trace the CO2 in joint infrastructure. That's a concern both for quality in terms of biogenic versus fossil CO2, making sure MRV works throughout the entire shared value chain, but then also in terms of quality specification, as you mentioned, Floris, because we're seeing this right now with food-grade quality CO2 that we are producing at some of the plants, where even there, if the CO2 is taken away by truck and then put into a storage unit, there are so many points at which something could go wrong, and then you have to figure out who's at fault, what to do about it. That's going to be a huge challenge, and sort of crafting all of these policies around this to be able to deal with qualities, with specifications, with MRV, and then with the multimodality and internationality of the supply chains is going to be.
Continuing on your point regarding the voluntary market, some discussions have been on, we have a mandatory market and a voluntary market. Will we see some, merge in that, do you think? I mean, going forward? Or?
I mean, I think we are already seeing some interplays. An example of that would be the Danish next tender, where there is a Danish subsidy for negative emissions from bioenergy, but at the same time, certificates can be sold on the voluntary carbon market. So at least there are projects sort of dabbling in both. And then also the CRCF is an example, I think, where there is a European framework for the moment set out for a voluntary market. But I think, as far as I'm aware, with the clear goal of possibly using that to integrate into compliance markets. So yeah, I think we are already seeing that.
Yeah. Ingvild, Aker carbon capture. How do you see yourself contributing the most within the value chain itself?
Yeah, so like the obvious first answer there is, of course, carbon capture technology. And I didn't mention that in the introduction, but we're delivering post-combustion carbon capture technologies and not DAC. And we offer technology within carbon capture for medium and large-sized emitters, and also we have an offshore solution for gas turbines. And where we see us contributing well here is with our, and also we see a lot of traction to get the industry moving, is from our standardized and modularized carbon capture plants that are pre-designed. And with pre-design, meaning when you buy it, it will have minimum engineering needed before you can start the production and getting it actually built, which means a shorter time for having carbon capture operational. So we believe that is a big benefit for the value chain itself. Also with regards to project implementation, we're developing strong execution experience now through the 7 carbon capture plants we're currently building. And also an interesting piece of that is that this is in 3 different projects. It's one in the Netherlands, one in Denmark, and one in Norway. And they're all different. So we have a cement plant capturing carbon, which is of course then CCS. We have a BECCS project, in the one in Denmark with Ørsted, and the one in Netherlands is CCU, which is not that relevant for this group here, but we bring then a lot of experience from these different projects into play.
And you are already participating in Northern Lights project?
Yes, we are.
Capturing from cement industry. Is that, are you equally available to capture from the hard-to-abate industry itself? Or?
Yeah, so what we say is sort of we're, and now I'm stealing Benedicte's word here, and I'm sorry for that, Benedicte. You said to me yesterday that you're do you say carbon agnostic almost? So we're capable of capturing carbon from most industries. So we see also that most of the hard-to-abate industries like cement and waste to energy are compatible with our technology. And of course, we have certain key industries that we're specifically focused on now. That also includes gas to power and biogenic as well. So we're spreading it more out. And currently we're also engaging with steel producers, and also we're having a test campaign started in the US now with pulp and paper. So we're quite spread on the industries.
Thanks. So, Floris, you mentioned a very interesting aspect, economies of scale, affordability. How can we move forward so everything will be, affordable and we reach the economies of scale?
Well, I think it's multiple. First of all, as I said, we try to be innovative, close to our client, build solutions for them, and then make sure we scale it up, we aggregate and bring it up to a scale that makes sense economically. I just mentioned the Kairos and Antwerp at Sea projects, where although we're in the beginning only 2, we hope that quite a few others will join the bandwagon and use the same terminal and infrastructure. We do the same in France. We do the same at other places. But I think at some point our clients need to have a business case. So even if we would significantly reduce, there needs to be either by a mandate for blue products or other, or for some form of consistent regulation and subsidy. The business case needs to be good enough for them that they can sign off. Yeah? So we will contribute by best technology. We will own, operate the plant. We will take a lot of the problems out of their hands, and we will give it on to competent sequesterers or mineralization companies. We will do that, so we need to work together, but I think overall we need to get to... the first projects will not be super affordable, but in the end, if we want to do these 700 projects in Europe, or 660, was mentioned yesterday, at some point we need to cross the line and they need to be affordable. They need to have a business case that makes sense and people join it. So we're now in that first phase.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we accelerate and get things moving. Yeah. So CO2 to Northern Lights, CO2 to you, and get companies enough confidence that if they have a better product, like blue cement or blue steel or whatever, that there is a market and it will not be diluted. The value for them will not be diluted beyond the business case they have.
Yeah. The challenges that we're facing are quite few in a new industry. Just to mention a few, we can say technological, economical, regulatory policy, we can say social and public acceptance, and then last but not least, infrastructure. Benedicte, as you can further develop, what are the good old phrase, the chain is just as strong as the weakest link. In the value chain itself, what is your... have you had some learnings in this process, and what is your kind of biggest obstacle there, or challenge?
Well, in terms of the value chain, I mean, if one drops out, it doesn't really work. So you need all of them to be there. From my side, I mean, I tend to lean back to VCM because that's kind of my focus area within Northern Lights, and I think that it can be a challenging route to go. In the compliance market, you have some rules to follow. It might not be perfect, but you do have some rules. In the VCM market, it's very fragmented. On our side, we will regardless measure, monitor, and report on what we do on our side according to the rules that apply. But within VCM, I have a feel there is an extra layer. And one of the reasons for that is due to the off-takers. They need to have assurance that this CO2 will stay underground. It is safe, it's traceable, it's sustainable. So even though we do the same measurements, I think it adds an additional layer. So having that embedded in a regulatory framework with clear directions on how we should do this would help.
Yeah. In your opinion, is the commercial path or train, is that ahead of the policy right now? I mean, in regards to that, is in respect to you mentioned the policy itself is we have to adapt. Is there something that you would like the policy to adapt to your thinking?
So what we've done. So we have an agreement with Ørsted for the Kalundborg hub and the volumes there. Aker Carbon Capture, SLB.
Thank you.
is part of that project, and it's publicly known that Microsoft has bought a good portion of those credits. So what we've done on our side is that we've created a collaboration team across the partners, where we try to implement the standard and the methodologies that are being developed by the CCS Plus initiative, and to register that project with Verra. I mean, from our side, if we register and get this project approved, I mean, it's certainly a benefit to us if not fully or parts of that is being adapted somewhere later on. But I think many of the methodologies used are more or less the same, since we're aiming for the same goal. But that would certainly help. Yeah.
I mean, I think just to quickly basically agree with you, I think in the voluntary market there has been a lot of great work in coming up with these methodologies and thinking about how do we measure 1 ton of carbon removal and make sure it actually is 1 ton of carbon removal that is as permanent as we claim it should be. And I think that is an important point to take over into a compliance system and then possibly, hopefully, standardize a bit more, because that is one of the big downsides I see right now as somebody working with many sources, but then also different storage options, that everything is very scattered and very project-based, and that also makes it hard for buyers to understand, because you have to look into the specific methodology, use the specific project in extremely high detail in order to understand what you're actually buying. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement for compliance markets.
Yeah. Floris, on the regulatory and policy challenges for Air Liquide, is there anything in particular that is
Well, we mentioned a few points already today. So specification is one. The fact that the UK is not in, which still has a lot of potential. Yeah, so those things. I think on the inland transportation, the bringing, for instance, Delta Rhine corridor and other things that clearly need to come with a lot of public-private initiative that needs to come. There's a lot of things to do. I do think that we're at there's a few projects that will start up relatively soon, Portals, Northern Lights, others. And so we need to keep that momentum and get a group of willing companies that want to sequester, that have the technology, that have the thing, also be open on the problems that they have to make the business case work, and have a discussion with the politicians and find the best way and the best sequence to do that. Yeah. But the infrastructure, onshore infrastructure, offshore infrastructure, there's still we're a bit lacking that at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be the denominator here that collaboration is something, and we talked about the value chain being that is pretty much what we're talking about, the megaton transport and storage. So collaboration, and I think you mentioned, Floris, in the beginning, you were talking about this event. I mean, having more events that people can actually come and learn from one another, and in a new industry where these projects. We are seeing now projects in Denmark, we're seeing projects in Netherlands, we're seeing projects in Norway, and of course, last but not least, here in Iceland. So the market is on the go and very dynamic. Maybe a kind of a last to all your panelists, is there any one thing that you know, how can we embrace opportunities at this stage?
We did by coming here. We hope that your project will fly. Not just that you're happy, but also that we have another way, and maybe in Iceland it will grow. But if it also is a possible way for some countries in Europe, that would be good. But at some point we need also to make FIDs and get
Of course.
steel in the ground. Yeah, so,
I fully agree on that.
Yeah, maybe adding to that, I mean, as you noticed, I'm very good about pointing out challenges, but I think there are also great opportunities in the entire value chain coming together. There has been a recent study by a Boston Consulting Group pointing out that just for CDR alone could be a $1 trillion industry. Add to that hard-to-abate emissions. A lot of value creation, a lot of job creation, and then maybe coming down to my small emitters again, those are usually farmers who have become energy producers, who are now becoming negative emission producers, bringing economic activity to their rural areas, solving issues in waste management and so on there. So I think yeah, there are a lot of great stories in these value chains, a lot of great opportunities that can be realized if we manage to all come together at the right time.
Yeah, no, I agree with all. I think, I mean, there are only benefits in this industry. And one thing that's been mentioned a couple of times here, and I'll mention it again, I mean, we're preaching to the choir. So I think we all agree. We need to take it out and push forward to make it work, I think, in order to see these benefits and successes.
Yeah. Ingvild?
Yeah, so basically we need as much storage as possible. So I agree with what's been said here and partnerships being important, but from our perspective, we see that dealing with several emitters, there will be enough to store for all parties. So I would say that's the big opportunity here. The market is going to be big. Absolutely.
Our time is up, but I want to thank you so much, and I hope the audience have learned a little bit more about the opportunities we have, as well as the challenges for transport and storage. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristinn.
Thank you.